remind you that we still have a couple of other events taking place, so look at your program. If you have any questions, ask one of the volunteers who will be wearing a red shirt, and let the show begin again. Thank you.
Thank you. So she's just said everything that I was going to tell you, so you're out of luck now. So I hope you enjoyed lunch and the workshops. If you have any additional questions that you didn't get to ask, please do so after the panel session. There should be time. And I want to introduce you to Associate Professor Steve McCauley, who's teaching one of the classes that I take here at Clark. I'm a second-year grad student. And Steve is heavily involved with the Worcester community and does many things already to promote and afford the new economy that's building here. So, Steve.
Great, thank you, Danny. I'll just speak from here. I'm really happy to have this exciting panel of people who I've worked with a lot in Worcester, who are really involved with practitioner work and really building a new economy here in Worcester. So it's going to be fun to hear what they have to say about doing this work and connecting things together, connecting the dots, as the theme of the workshop or the theme of the summit is, to make something happen. So I'm going to just let them briefly introduce what organization they work with and what the focus of that work is. And then we'll have a little bit of a panel discussion where I'll raise some questions for them and we can discuss. And then I think we'll have a little bit of time to take some questions from the audience as well. So it's Asa Needle immediately to my right, Mary Bridget Hampton, and then Casey Burns. And so I'll let them introduce themselves and their project a little bit first, and then we'll get into some questions. So Asa.
My name is Asa Needle. I grew up in Worcester, and recently, I think in the last year, got involved with an organization called the Worcester Solidarity and Green Economy Alliance, and Steve's a part of that. Many other people in the audience and also in this summit are part of that alliance, and it's sort of trying to do on a very local level what this new economy initiative is doing all over the country, and the way that the new economy initiative tries to inspire certain values about what an economy could be. The Worcester Solidarity and Green Economy Initiative looks at the way that Worcester in particular, and also more generally in the region, those values can make an actual impact and affect in very concrete ways people's work and home lives.
Hi, I'm Mary Bridget Hampton, and I work with the Artichoke Food Co-op and also the Agape community in Hardwick, which is a sustainable community that runs on solar energy. And so my experience is both with producers, the people that make the food, and the consumers that are looking for healthy food in the area, as well as people that live entirely off the grid, and how you can actually live your daily life in a practical way and still have time to live the rest of your life. So basically like practical daily living with sustainability, and also about the larger picture about how we relate to each other and the differences between consuming locally and consuming from importing goods from elsewhere.
And my name is Casey Burns, and I'm the Food Justice Program Director at a small local grassroots environmental justice nonprofit organization here in Worcester called the Regional Environmental Council, or REC. And the work that we do in our food justice program is we try to help to support initiatives and start programs that will both serve an immediate need for all of our residents, particularly low-income people, people of color, seniors, school children, anyone who's excluded from the current resources for healthy, sustainable food in our city. We help to support the development of resources, as well as to support streams of sustainability initiatives of income-generating projects and social entrepreneur projects so that they can be self-sustainable, as well as keep the decision-making power of our programs at the grassroots level. So we have a community gardens program. We support about 59 community gardens throughout the city, including 17 school gardens. We run a community farmers market at the YMCA, and we have a mobile farmers market where this year we're going to have 15 regular stops throughout the city at different target locations. We have a youth program where we have 32 teens helping develop environmental leaders, both for to have strong individuals from our community, as well as to support and staff and work as in decision-making roles within our program in its entirety, as well as in decision-making roles outside that we can help to place them on advisory councils, and a cooking and education program, Cooking Matters, where we run cooking demonstrations and education around how to use the produce that's available from farmers markets at our, how do you use those? And then we also, we have some specialized initiatives working with refugee and immigrant farmers, helping to develop market opportunities for people who are especially coming with a lot of agricultural experience and knowledge to be able to connect them to market opportunities when they come to this country. And we're working on different kinds of incubator programs to support those kind of self-starts with our farmers markets as well.
Great, thanks. So to kind of clarify and just kind of locate where we all are in regards to a new economy. So Asa, you work with SAGE. That's kind of a activist network that's promoting the new economy. Is that kind of a good way to frame it?
Definitely. I think that SAGE is a combination of concrete projects that it takes on, and then there's the broader networking that it does. So in regards to concrete things with the actual people that come to SAGE meetings, the things that they're involved in, we're working on creating a revolving loan fund. We're using grant funding and what people pay into at yearly conferences and member dues. We can use that money to then recycle and support other what we might define as alternative economic initiatives, whether they be worker cooperatives or time banks or other kinds of projects that operate outside of that capitalist agenda. Other projects include the yearly conference, and which this year is happening at the end of August, and it's going to be held in Worcester, and people from around the region are going to come. And I feel like this is where the concrete things that SAGE does in terms of organizing and actually reaching out to people connects to the way in which we're not just another project, but sort of stepping back and looking recursively at the way that different organizations like SAGE interacts with the economy, and distinguishing the organizations themselves from a larger network, which no one organization or even defined group of organizations can comprise, which is a totally different paradigm in terms of looking at economy, which includes all these kinds of new ideas of democracy and mutual aid, or very old ideas that are coming to play in new ways. And I'm trying to use tools like the revolving loan fund, the conference, trainings, and coming to conferences like this and networking in order to make people that may not see themselves as being part of that greater network or greater movement buy into the idea that they can be part of something larger.
Great. And then, so Mary Bridget, you're involved with both a producer and a consumer cooperative organization. Is that a good way to frame?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And then Casey, the REC work, that's kind of it's a regional environmental council that gets some public funding and some grassroots fundraising.
Yeah, right now we get largely in the past we've gotten most of our funding through private foundations. We did get some funding in the last couple of years from the USDA Community Food Project Program and a Farmers Market Promotion Program, so that's helped to beef up our programs a lot. But really, our intent and direction of our program is we're a member of our organizations. We're a membership organization, so you can become a member through volunteering or through paying money. And then also this social entrepreneurship stream is kind of the new direction we're thinking about trying to move in, so that we're generating our own income. When these large grants go away, our programs aren't going to disappear. And also, with the money comes decision-making power. So we want that to be with our members and with people who are contributing through participating in our programs.
Great. Yeah, one of the things I'm always really curious about with the practitioners who are essentially doing the work of building our new economy, but my question is, to what extent are you intentionally building an economy that's outside of the mainstream or capitalist economy? Obviously, there's some points where we engage with mainstream institutions and other points where we're working against them. So how do you frame that in terms of, do you think of yourselves as really actively creating a new and alternative economy that's outside of the capitalist economy?
I think for us, I'll answer briefly. I think for us, I think that we are, because we see so much in the front lines of our programs with their youth, with people who are facing food insecurity issues, who are facing health issues because, you know, they aren't able to afford, get to, or it's not in what they're comfortable or used to eating, or there's just explicit racism blocking them from accessing resources. We're finding and seeing that it's not working, and so we have to create an alternative. And as much as we can, you know, try to beg, borrow, and steal for those resources to, you know, shift in our direction, I think that our immediate need is to develop something else that works for us now too.
For the Artichoke Food Co-op, it is a cooperative business, so it's actually owned by all of the members of the business, and the profits or the excess capital goes back to members as an annual discount, as well as the resources go back into the business to pay for overhead and also offer community programs to help create as much community as we can in the local area. People really connect around food, and by creating a more direct line between the farmer who comes in from just milking the cows that morning and who's the third generation dairy farmer, and saying hi to him, and the mom that comes in an hour later and gets the milk. That's a very direct line that where the farmer earns a much greater percentage than he would if he had to distribute through traditional channels. And even the consumer price is either equitable or slightly or less even than the traditional retail price of most products in the store as well. So the consumers and of course the milk tastes great. So the milk is better, the cows are happy, the farmer's happy, the mom is happy, the kid is happy. So I see it as a very direct link between the people producing the food and the people who are looking for healthy food for their families.
Any thoughts on that, Isa?
I mean, I think it's really interesting because when we talk about having all these amazing projects that, you know, are focused on fighting for food justice or working to have more equitable distribution of resources inside of these collaborative things like food co-ops, and really connecting people locally to people that are actually producing the things that we're consuming and putting into our own bodies. Those are a lot of trends that are embraced in some ways by people that are also capitalists and also pro-continuation of capitalism, even if it's a more just or not corporatism or not egregious, whatever you want to call it, more equitable, more egalitarian capitalism. And I think that there's a great opportunity for collaboration there, where people that might not share our critical analysis of certain large worldwide institutions can still connect with us in terms of these very concrete, like, hey, I want to meet my farmer because that lets me have control over what I put into my body, or hey, even if I support these like larger institutions of capitalism and don't understand the ways in which those inherently prop up racial divides, I can still get pissed off about this one instance where these people have no access to any kind of healthy food or any kind of education about how they can use their resources more effectively. And then there comes the other side of that, where you want to be able to create those collaborations, and I think this is something that Sage has struggled with, where you also want to look at the way that if you don't have critical analysis of the way that capitalism acts upon individual projects that might see themselves as being outside in some way, you are going to see replication of the same dynamics of oppression inside of those organizations that exist in those larger frameworks. So I think that's something that our church does, and REC do a great job of, is not just being like, hey, this is a cool thing that happens, but also this is actually in opposition to something that can't exist except as in some way, a political act to say that people deserve food regardless of economic class or documentation status or age or sex or race. And that isn't, there's a common sense human reality, but to make sure that that the assumptions that underlie the fact that that's obvious don't make invisible the way that you can believe those things and still act in such a way that perpetuates those disparities. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, definitely. So why don't we push that a little further and say, well, what is it about the way your organizations operate, maybe in terms of either governance structures within them or even just kind of modes of interaction within the organizations that seek to build something that's not oppressive? What are those kind of ways of decision making within your organizations or explicit ways in which you're trying to create new models?
Well, I think one of the things for me is consumers even having a choice. If we're only stuck with Walmart or large big box stores, we can only choose what they offer us. We would never have the choice to purchase milk from a small farm or purchase from a company that uses pesticides or doesn't use pesticides, or another company that does use pesticides. So if we don't have places that can offer locally produced, consciously made choices, like our members, if we find out that a product is produced in a way that's not, that the majority of the members do not feel is in alignment with our values, we will stop carrying the product. Because companies change over time. Like, is it Meyer Flynn? It's like a tomato paste. A lot of these small companies that started out really small 10 years ago have been bought out by huge companies. So they're no longer actually those little companies anymore, even though they still look like they're those little companies. So it does take like research, being aware, and being able to make choices about what you carry. I don't have control over what Stop and Shop carries. And Stop and Shop is not interested in carrying something that's necessarily sustainable. They're interested in making enough money to keep their shareholders happy. But in a co-op, the shareholders are all the members of the co-op. So what is making the owners happy or the shareholders happy is values-based, not just financially based. And that has us being able to purchase from this farmer allows him to sustain the lifestyle that he has been living in his family for 3 generations. And that goes back into community as well. So I'd much rather be able to put my economic investments into things I believe, food I believe in, from people that I can trust than randomly out into the world, and who knows where it came from.
And I think for us, I mean, we all try to do the best we can not to replicate the systems that we're fighting against. I think the REC, we try to be intentional and very specific about making sure that our board of directors is reflective in terms of class, race, geography, where they're from, of course, values, intent of the communities that we serve, that our staff is as well, so the board of directors and our staff is reflective of the communities, that we are supporting our youth in order to be able to grow within our organization, in order to be in kind of authentic decision-making roles, and that we're utilizing participatory approaches in our decisions about the way our programs are formed and structured, and not guessing or assuming that we know what resources are needed. I think one of the strengths that REC has, which is also occurs, is that we are so small, is that we can be very adaptive to new initiatives and new resources and new things that come up. You know, oh, let's start a farmer's market. For a while, our mobile farmer's market was just like a van that donated to us with like a duct tape sign, literally, to the side that said farmer's market. And so we're able to just try things out, which is really one of our strengths. It makes a lot of people think we're just crazy, but I think that's, you know, it is one of our strengths that we're able to do, and that's something we take seriously with our youth program. We also, excuse me, it's not something we use across the board in the organization, but with our youth program, we use consensus-based decision making for all aspects of the program, including hiring, behavior management, programmatic development, and decision making throughout in the immediate as well as in the kind of strategic planning process of that. And so those are all kind of ways that we try not to replicate those systems, because that is something that that we see so evidently in our work, and that's something that I always have in my mind also when we're supporting a new initiative. I don't want to jump ahead, but like we're supporting a new initiative, like say, you know, people are excited about a food hub, or people are excited about these new things. We want to at least be at the table for these initiatives to help to be a voice, to make sure that new resources that are developed are going to be inclusive, both in their process that they're developed and in what the resources that they're offering.
I mean, I'm looking at a lot of the organizations are part of, some of them are whiter than others, and some of them are more privileged than others, and I think that that's something that SAGE is looking at too, is like how can we be a more diverse organization, because it's going to be very hard to represent, you can't just represent something that's an alternative to capitalism, you also have to, well, to put it another way, you can't just create a structure and think that because from your viewpoint this structure that you've created is free of oppressions because you've been so intentional about it. Also, you have to look at who was involved in creating that and know that there's no perfect diversity of like everyone being accounted for, like no matter who creates the structure, like whether it's a food co-op or whether it's a coalition like SAGE is. Like SAGE is a specific organization, it has flaws that are specific to that organization, and they're different maybe from the flaws of the system as a whole. But when we created a coalition like SAGE, it wasn't everyone that we look at as being part of the solidarity economy that created that. It's a specific group of people that created that, and their specific viewpoints and their priorities and their own sometimes privileged ideas that went into that. And that being said, I think it's an amazing, beautiful, and also powerful, immensely effective tool, and we've been able to do a lot of great organizing, but I think it's also something to be constantly self-critical and reflective of, that the kind of organizing you do is going to be a result of the backgrounds of the people that are doing it.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so we have, to some extent, setting up structures and systems of governance that are inclusive, but at the same time being constantly aware of our privileges that come in and various things like that. So, thanks. So, Casey, you mentioned about sort of connecting with other initiatives in the city. If we could kind of take it in that direction, all of the work your individual organizations are doing are really powerful. Can you talk a little bit, any of you or all of you, about some of the linkages you have with other organizations or initiatives in the city and how that sort of synergies are developing?
And yeah, I think for us, one of the things that we are really strong on is our partnerships, and that's partly due from need. It's like you have to develop partnerships. We as an organization don't really own anything besides this van that we got donated. We rent our apartment. We don't own any land. We don't own our 2 youth farms. We don't own any of the 59 community gardens that we support. And so we're able to run those things through partnerships. So all of our community gardens are connected to either a private landowner, our youth farms, a private landowner, or an organization, a church, a school, the Worcester Housing Authority. So all of those require development of relationships and figuring out what kind of partnership is going to work for those. We rely a lot on resources, like the Maine South CDC gives us water and storage for our youth farm. The Parks Department for our other farm, we're able to establish a relationship and use that. The city provides the compost. Holy Cross, we use Holy Cross's greenhouse and work study students to grow 5,000 seedlings a year. Our farmers markets are at the YMCA and the senior center and Editor Community Health Center and Family Health Center, and so it's all at locations that we rely on all of those people to help us to market our programs, to let their constituents know about the resources that are available, because we ourselves don't have, the marketing power or budget in order to be able to reach those. So we rely on, networks of networks in order to be able to reach everyone, as well as just to have the land and the space and be able to run the programs that we do. We run this year-round youth program with 32 youth, and we're out of a first floor apartment, a triple decker. So we have no indoor space really for them to go. So we are outside as much as possible, and when we can't be during the cold months, we rely on other meeting spaces, other organizations, other activities, and we make it work on how to get there. So it's very much we rely a lot on our partners.
I mean, I have connections. I didn't know who else was going to be on this panel until today, and of course I have so many connections with you guys. I know that we do a lot of work with the REC, and again, these kinds of collaborations are kind of a matter of survival if you're a small organization. Maybe if you're larger, you can afford to be more self-sufficient, but I think that at this level of organizing, you're only as strong as the number of organizations you're connected to and that have a stake in seeing you continue to exist. So we have, relationships we've had with the RSC for a long time, working around doing outreach around these environmental listening sessions, or outreach around collecting registrations for free weatherization, free energy audits, which is something that we've been collaborating on. And in terms of the artichoke, if I can do a quick plug, this fall we're doing a co-op academy, which is going to be a comprehensive 10-week in-depth training on how to create a cooperative focused on worker cooperatives, but also with a broader view of consumer, producer, housing, all the different forms of cooperative structure. And we've invited Artichoke and other organizations to be a part of this. That's one potential area of collaboration, but also as both big organizations that have a lot of stake in seeing the success of cooperatives at large in Worcester. There's a lot of points of
It's funny if you read about business and are thinking like, okay, I've got like make these partnerships, and it seems kind of like you have to put on a, I don't know, business suit and have a briefcase. But in a local economy, a partnership works like this. Casey and I were walking over here after lunch, 5-minute walk. I was like, what do you think about carrying grains from the co-op in the mobile van? She's like, sure, that sounds like a good idea. Partnership. So that's how easily it can work when you know people and you just have ideas and they can fit together in a really easy manner without having to go through a bunch of crazy hoops. Because I know I could trust her, and that we'll find ways to move forward with that. So that is what, and another thing too is I know there's a lot of people in this area that are starting CSAs. We've definitely had a lot more housing co-ops last year that had CSAs, and urban farming is really starting to take off. And on the flip side, when I'm at the co-op and answering the phone, almost all of the people that call us that want us to carry their products are from California or Washington. So there's gotta be a way to, I just feel like I want to connect more with the small consumer and it's almost like, I don't know, it seems like there's a lot of smallish groups in Worcester, and like collaborating more is always better, because I always learn from that's how I learn, is from other people, and sharing what we know and what we have with each other, it just makes the whole thing a lot more, to me, it makes it a lot more enjoyable, and that's part of why I'm doing this, is to be part of the community.
That leads into another thing I was going to ask about is, what are some of the obstacles that you face as we think about either kind of scaling up this whole initiative or just getting more people involved, whether it's issues of reaching out to wider ranges of groups of people or connecting with different kinds of groups, or what are some of the things that you face as challenges or obstacles in your organizations?
I think on that too. So I think that, funding is always a big issue, and finding ways that we can keep our funding sustainable and, as I was talking about decision making. So it's like, that's always a worrying concern, and so it's balancing not worrying about it all the time so that we can actually do our programs. That's one of the obstacles. I think also kind of connected, I would say another major obstacle that we face that we face is just movement building. And so people knowing, being excited enough to support these kinds of initiatives and reach out there and know, like Worcester doesn't have the same presence of where the farmers markets are, the community gardens program, and the enthusiasm around that, as I think I've seen in other places. So there's natural support for those programs. And then at the same time, kind of the flip side of that is as we start and these issues become more and more trendy and exciting, I think we need to be very careful and strategic about how we develop new initiatives around the city. And I say somewhat selfishly, I was running these programs, working at the REC myself personally for 9 years and supporting these programs and seeing kind of the change in the enthusiasm around it, the kind of trendiness and excitement around them, because they are cool and awesome and everyone should have one. But we still need to be really strategic so that we don't cannibalize each other, and another farmer's market doesn't open up on Saturdays a mile from, or less than a mile from our farmer's market, and they're competing against each other, and making sure we're all on the same page as far as what we want to support. We want to support, a Worcester that we love and it's awesome. We have places to go and we can get healthy food and communities are safe and have places to go with their kids. But we also want to support farmers. And so in order to do that, we need to be smart and kind of pool these efforts and be strategic and just smart about how we develop new initiatives.
I absolutely agree, and I think that there's sort of those twin demons of funding and the constant fear of collapse because you don't have enough connections or things that hold you up. And I think that, like I said again, it's like not just a matter of preference, a matter of survival, because cooperative organizations or organizations that are lobbying the rights of minorities are always going to be crushed through like having inferior funding and not having the power of the hegemony and the power of these like huge institutional structures behind them, unless they work together, unless they have those kinds of collaborations, and unless they see their struggles as being part of a larger one, that they have a stake in every one of these seemingly disparate organizations winning their own struggle. In a very concrete way, SAGE is trying to make sure that Worcester organizations that could be collaborating, or like you guys have like one of you has a need and the other person has an opportunity to fill it in a mutually beneficial way. We've seen like countless examples of that come up in SAGE meetings, at the SAGE conference, where one person had a whole bunch of vegetable oil and another person had a biodiesel process, and they were like, well, let's work something out. And a worker co-op came out of that, and all kinds of ways in which needs and services can be exchanged. And one of the biggest flaws about the capitalist system is that it monetizes everything to the point where you can't see those kinds of shared needs that are hidden behind the facade of constant competition and trying to get the maximum amount of capital for your product. And one of the biggest projects the SAGE is doing to make sure those collaborations continue and to make them visible to people that might not be inside the small, sometimes insular subcultures or groups in which these kinds of alternative ideas ferment, is to create an online map of all the alternative economic projects in Worcester, as well as seeing them as part of one comprehensive system. The projects of political resistance, which make the space that is necessary to have the breathing room to create these alternative systems, and the projects, however much they're overlapped and intertwined with the first two, projects of social inclusion that are deliberate about being anti-oppressive, about including groups that are normally marginalized by traditional economies, and by making visible all these different projects in Worcester and potentially in the region, like the REC, like the Artichoke. We not only visualize a new way, all these individual new ways to exist and to engage in economy with one another, but also the way that they're all interconnected and the way that they can represent a system.
Great, thanks. We just have 1 minute left, but I just wanted to give you one last chance to offer any final thoughts about a new economy. In a way, we frame it as an economy, a different kind of economy, which in some ways makes us think about monetizing everything. But maybe if you could just share in just a sentence or two, what are some of the joys beyond the money and the economy part of it that come from doing this kind of movement building?
I don't. So I want to say something good. But I feel like it's been an honor being able to be part of this work for myself. I mean, I think that we've seen with the youth, it's like that's the most direct pleasure that I've gotten, and excitement is seeing their development, seeing the things that they've done, being with their struggles, and all the things I think, and seeing their development and connectiveness that they've made through the programs, I think is an amazing energy to be around. And so I think that's one of the real, that's like the heart of the work for me.
I just love it just happens a lot at the co-op where I'll be having a conversation with one person and then somebody else overhears something and I'll be like, oh, I didn't know you were a holistic nutritionist and you were just looking for a holistic nutritionist. And just by having those conversations that get started around, whoa, how do you cook this? Larger relationships bloom and we're able to really share and connect with each other in really healthy and enjoyable ways. So that's what I just love when people are just connect and feel good about what they're able to that they're able to choose things for themselves and their family that feel good, and they're able to connect with other people that also have similar values and make a difference in the lives of the farmers that we work with and each other.
I think I sort of grew up inside of a lot of these ideas about mutualism, and I grew up in this community center called Stone Soup, where a lot of these kinds of ideas about caring for one another and creating different ways of relating to each other in ways that are equal, in ways in which I'm not trying to get the one up on you, or trying to devalue your identity or take away or make these basic human rights a matter of deserving and not deserving. But I think my whole process of being part of organizations like Sage and working with other amazing organizations is sort of unlearning these huge narratives in my life about how deep that goes, and how deep that sort of conditioning to think of, well, food as being something where you work and then you get food, you earn the right to eat, or you earn the right to live, or you earn even the right to be your own gender identity, or have the right to basic disability service, as opposed to those being things that should be obvious. And I think that when you realize, well, those are things that are fundamentally human rights that we need to honor, I think it's also incredibly terrifying once you get an emotional sense of disparity and sense of unfairness between what exists and what should be. It can make you feel very small, but also even knowing, having that sense of rightness and having that sense of completeness, of that vision of what another way of looking at existing and living can be, is something that can inspire you and give you the energy to keep doing stuff like this every day, even if it seems dumb or it seems like it's not doing anything. And the glimpses you get of what that looks like when you develop a one-on-one connection with somebody is what it feels like.
Great. That was great closing. Thanks. Okay, let's thank the panel. Yeah, we have time for 1 or 2 questions. If there are any questions from
If there are, use this microphone. to you and I'm thinking, I must be on another planet. Why? Because we live in probably the most competitive society on earth, where individual achievement and meritocracy, which results, of course, in winner takes all, right? That's the main culture. And that's the culture that's being taught generation after generation after generation. So I listen to you and I say, okay, is this just a fringe, or is it the beginning of some change in the society? I can't tell. But I was reading in the Globe this week, the people are applying to colleges. This is the week that they hear whether they were accepted or not. Parents writing on Facebook, bragging about what college the kids got into. Parents bragging to parents, never mind the kids, right? I mean, this is the world out there that I see every day. How do we connect these dots for me? Right? The main culture and what you are describing. A life where you derive satisfaction, fulfillment from a different model of succeeding. And where will you be in 20 years when you have to send a kid to college? And so, just give me some guidance of how to see.
I think for us, we do see a lot. There's, we see a big gap in what we're doing and how many people we're reaching and what the potential is for even within Worcester for people not accessing our programs or not knowing about them, not supporting the initiatives. And so that's what I was thinking of. So we are trying to figure that out too, of how we can make it sustainable, how we can make the leap, because I think, and that's through the movement building, that's through bringing on people with resources, and that's through the being smart and intentional about the way that we develop our programs so that they're self-sustaining, and we are using smart models that are going to allow us to grow and reach more and more people. But I think for us, we also just see it as a justice movement, and so it's not a question of whether or not we're going to try to do this, because there's just too many people who are suffering the consequences of not having it be the structure that we need. And so, I think, that's where we're coming from.
That's true. I think the biggest challenge that we have at the co-op is that people give too much. We have a huge amount of people that are like really big givers, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of heart to keep showing up and keep working on communicating until we actually understand each other, which sometimes takes a while. So packaging your mission in a way that connects with the way the people that are looking for you can actually see it and connect with you is, I think, really important to use the internet for the initial connection and information section, but then for people to actually connect with your organization, that needs to be personal. And that is done through like offering events and that kind of thing. And there is a lot of, it's funny because I know I keep saying like, please know your limitations. Of course, I do the same thing. And I know like so many people are on like 50 boards. Like I was just joking with someone. We were like, oh, a different board meeting every night of the week. Like we should have them all in one night since it's many people on the same boards. So it's really, I guess it finding a better balance between the two is the way to go for the future.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know it's not it's less of a question, more like a comment or a exclamation. I'm personally like an unschooler. I haven't like been enrolled in a school since 6th grade, and I've benefited a lot from being here at Clark and being benefiting from all the intelligence and the thinking that goes on here. But there's also a lot of profound disgust for me in the way that the competition around education mirrors the competition in the economy at large, and just pervades and poisons every area of human interaction, from romance to food to trying to get prestige or the media. And I think that definitely ideas that are outside of that framework are marginalized. They're also very, very old and have like powerful histories here in the United States and all over the world. And we can look to other countries, like we can look to South America, and we can look to places like Greece and Spain to look at models of different ways of organizing that may not be seen as possible in America, where the capitalist system is stronger. But I think there is also the struggle to get the discourse shifted from not just should we tighten the playing field, or should we level the playing field, to let's burn down the playing field. Let's like finish with the playing field idea, and let's just give people what they need, and let's work together and make that happen.
Thank you, Dan. We had just time for one quick question. I saw the gentleman in the blue shirt first, so we can just ask. We have about 1 minute for.
Yeah, I just had one. One question. In terms of localizing and strengthening things at the local level, how and this is sort of how the three panelists might see efforts like the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership (TPP), which apparently has provisions that we're concerned because it might prevent not only a public bank but an organization like New York City has a housing authority that very creatively, through use of bonds and other things, invests in affordable housing. But because they give below market rate subsidies, that would be outlawed under the Trans-Pacific Partnership. What can we do? Is this just a sign of the end of the last gasp of centralized economic power trying to do something? Can we stay local, and how do we fight with the powers that are trying to take over from the top? That's my question. How do we deal with that? Because so many people I've heard say things like, well, we're really changing things, but we need to stay below the radar. Whose radar? What's going on here?
Maybe just one quick response to that.
Well, the people at the top or close to the top do listen when you make consumer choices. There's a lot more organic and naturally produced food out than there was. The average person spends over $300 a month on groceries, so investing that in local farms as opposed to General Mills makes, first of all, it doesn't actually impact General Mills that much if it's only a few people, but just even a few people on this side makes a huge difference. And then the more things, people kind of magnetize to each other. So as this gets stronger, this actually allows people to become stronger and feel more confident about, now local people know they can get a steady supply of cereal from here, so they just stop buying it from here, and then their friends start buying it from here, and then these guys really start to notice. So that, just spending what you're already spending on groceries, spending it in a different place with a different producer, something as simple as that makes a huge difference in the month, just in the first month for a local producer, and then certainly within a few, like 6 months or 12 months with even the largest producers. So, yeah, that's one way of thinking of it.
Great, thanks. Sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but thanks so much for your attendance, and thank you to the panelists.
So we're just gonna ask you if you wanna, before you take a quick break, we're actually going to have Latoya come and give a couple of announcements before we welcome our closing speaker. And we're going to be making a little bit of adjustments here, so if you want to stretch, get up, and it'll be time for announcements before 2 to 3 minutes where we get to introduce our next speaker.